When life gets unpredictable, preparation matters. In medicine, it's all about staying alert, ready for whatever comes through the door. On the road, it's no different. That's why Volvo designs vehicles to help anticipate risk, reduce harm, and protect lives. The Volvo XC90's advanced safety systems inspire confident decisions wherever the road takes you. The Volvo XC90, for life. Proud sponsor of the Pit Podcast. Learn more at volvocars.ca/safety.
All right, welcome back to the Elias Macko Show. Now, we found out last week that the work to replace the roof of the Olympic Stadium is halfway complete. Now, approximately 45% of the $870 million budget was spent on dismantling the roof and replacing the old concrete technical ring with a steel one that is 5 times lighter. There's been one slight cost overrun. Electrical and mechanical systems will cost $20 million more. But given the history of Olympic Stadium, I guess maybe we should count ourselves lucky that it's $20 million and not $200 million. But again, 55% of that budget still remains to be spent as they are going to replace the roof. Last week, Tourism Minister Amélie Dion did not want to discuss what will come after the roof because as we spoke to Jeremy Filosa, a Cogeco Nouvelle reporter, as he told us, they're going to have to spend to get this stadium ready to really house events. They're going to have to spend, $500 million on the inside, new seating, a whole bunch of other stuff. So what comes next for the Olympic Stadium? And should we really, truly look at spending yet another $1 billion on the aging facility? Let's find out what the Quebec Conservatives think about this one. Adrien Pouliot joins us. He's former leader of the Quebec Conservative Party, but now a member, and one of his dossiers is the Olympic Stadium file. Mr. Pouliot, welcome to the program.
Good morning, Mr. Macos.
So, last week on this show, I was I was amazed, right? That it seems like there's a lot of consensus in Quebec politics that we just need to spend this money on Olympic Stadium. And I'm hoping to make this into an election issue. So, the Quebec Conservatives, where do you stand on finishing this roof and getting to the end of this $870 million? And then what comes next? And I'm told on good authority, it's going to cost at least another $500 million. Where do you stand?
Well, we are, our party is not only against the referendum. Many people look at us as being the party against the referendum, but we're also in favor of the free market and less government intervention. With less government meddling, less bureaucracy, lower taxes, more efficient delivery of services. So, of course, when we hear that they're going to spend $870 million just to fix it, and then, as you said, there's all the interior, it's a big concern to us. Now, the Olympic Stadium is an icon of Montreal, but it's also for those who were born after 1976. I mean, it's a symbol of overambitious design, poor project management by the government, labor disputes, corruption, and so it is a big concern to us. And I question whether or not the only route to fix this issue was more money, but from the taxpayer. If you recall, after the Montreal Olympics, we had the Los Angeles Olympics. And what did they do? They took a totally different route. They went through a private-public partnership that was run by Peter Uberoth. And it was basically a private nonprofit entity that ran the Olympics in 1984. And believe it or not, they made money at it. Yeah. They made like $250 million.
So, but this leads me to, we know the history, right? And you mentioned free market. You don't want to get the government involved in things that you don't need to get into. Hasn't the jury decided on this one? If you look at what private enterprise thinks about Olympic Stadium, the Montreal Alouettes, right? They're the football team of the city. They don't want to play there. The CF Montreal, the soccer team, they don't want to play there. There is Major League Baseball has made it clear they will never, if a team comes back to Montreal, they will never allow it to play at Olympic Stadium. The free market, private enterprise, has made it very clear they want nothing to do with Olympic Stadium. So I guess I have to ask you again, what are you going to do with if you were to form government? What would you do with this stadium that no private enterprise seemingly wants to be a part of?
Well, the first thing we would do is we would do a worldwide casting of, are there any people out there who would be interested in either buying it or getting involved into a private-public partnership to run this piece of real estate. Now, there are very successful privately run sports venues in Montreal. I mean, the Bell Center is one. You know, the Saputo Stadium, and there are we even have in Montreal one of the only arts venue that is a public-private partnership. The Maison Symphonique, which was a great success. So the first question that we should always ask ourselves is, does the government have to be involved? So I would do that. I would go out and see if is there anybody out there who would take it over from us? Maybe I would, if we can't get, $300, $400, $500 million for it, I would be willing to sell it to them for $1. At least get it off our hands.
So wait, but listen, I have to ask you something because that's already been tried. The Quebec government tried to get the Montreal Expos to buy Olympic Stadium for $1. And they said no. This is decades ago. Every single business person I've talked to says, no way, no how. If you were going to spend $500 million on a stadium, you'd build a new one from scratch, built to 2026 standards, not buy an albatross of Olympic Stadium. So it's curious here, Monsieur Pouliot, because it seems like you're suggesting things that we know wouldn't work. I don't know any businessman who has ever said that Olympic Stadium can be a success without heaps of public money.
Well, it worked in Los Angeles. It works in a whole other, a number of places. I'm not saying it would necessarily be successful, but at least we should try.
But hasn't it been tried? My question is, hasn't it already been tried? Why do you have to try again?
No, it hasn't been tried. It hasn't been tried. I mean, offering to Mr. Bronfman to buy the stadium for $1, that's not really, Mr. Bronfman had the Expo team. It's a sports team. It's not a real estate thing. Mm. So I think you have to go out and see, just canvas out there. And you may want to add some incentives like, is there any other real estate that this buyer could have to make this? Look at the Bell Center. There's a center, but there's also real estate. 3 huge apartment buildings where they can make money. There's concessions. There's stores. So I'm not saying I have the solution, but I'm saying at least we should try.
Okay, now, so let me ask you this: if you tried. And what I suspect is everyone would say, sorry, that's the stadium would cost so much to upkeep and require so much renovations, we're not interested. Would you put it as a possibility to demolish the Olympic Stadium? And I just want to make something clear. When I say demolish the Olympic Stadium, I'm talking about the stadium part, not the tower, which can still stay. Would your party, if no private enterprise wants to touch Olympic Stadium, would you be open to demolishing it?
Well, before we get there, think about public transport. Okay, in London, for example, public transport is run by the private sector. Are they making money? Well, they get a grant to help them pay for the operation. So it's not only, it's not a question necessarily of a private company buying the Olympic Stadium and making money with it, but at least maybe you tell them, okay, how much you want for us to give it to you and for you to operate it. Maybe they say, look, we need a grant of $50 million a year, $75 million a year. I don't know, but I would much rather pay someone $50 million a year for the next 10 years than let the government operate this thing because they don't know how to operate a business.
Mm-hmm.
Now, assuming for a moment, Mr. Marcos, that nobody wants it, I don't honestly, it's an icon of Montreal, and it would cost a lot of money to destroy it. Mm-hmm. We're talking about $1 billion to destroy this thing, to dismantle it.
So let me just tell you something, Mr. Pouliot, because you're adamant that you would actually try and find a new vocation and go after private enterprise. I've had discussions with those in the demolition industry, and they have told me point blank that those numbers that the government says that it's going to cost $1 billion to demolish are nonsense. And I've looked at this, all the previous stadiums in North America that have been demolished, not a single demolition has come close to $100 million. So I think some questions need to be asked about a government that keeps coming up with this very high number to demolish when there's no example on planet Earth of another demolition costing anywhere near that much.
Well, it's quite possible that the bureaucracy has inflated those numbers because, they want to keep it and they want to keep their jobs at maintaining it and so on and so forth. So that's another issue. And certainly I would go out and again, ask around and make sure that we have the lowest number possible to demolish it. Yeah. But
I have to wrap up here, but I just to put a bow on this interview. You're saying what you are proposing, you're telling me it hasn't been tried before by previous governments, Liberal or CAQ or PQ.
A worldwide, well-organized, well-orchestrated pitch to see if we can have somebody to take it over. I don't think that's been done.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Mr. Pouliot, thanks so much for coming on the show. Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
That's Adrien Pouliot, who is former leader of the Quebec Conservative Party. He's still in the party and responsible for the Olympic Stadium dossier.
iHeartRadio is throwing it back.
2010s, the decade.
To the days of huge hits and unforgettable anthems. A non-stop stream of the biggest and best.
Drake, Rihanna, Beyonce, Katy, Gaga, The Weeknd.
And more. All your decade-defining favorites all in one place.
Hi, it's Katy Perry.
Hey, it's Bruno Mars.
This is Kesha.
Find 2010's The Decade on the free iHeartRadio app. Preset the station so it's always one tap away.